Hi everyone, it's the last month of winter here and I'm thinking about what crops I can grow this spring. One of the crops I'm excited about is sweet potatoes, or kumara as we call them here in New Zealand. For those of you who don't know, the way to get new sweet potato plants is by growing slips from old sweet potatoes, which you can then break off and plant them into the ground. I'm going to do a bit of an experiment in this video and try two different methods for growing slips. That way we can see which method gives the most slips in the shortest amount of time. Both methods are really simple. The first method is the water method, where you simply submerge half the sweet potato in water and leave the top half exposed. Here I'm just using a jar to sit the sweet potato in, as it fits nice and snug at the level I want. But I've also seen people suspend them using toothpicks to get them at the depth they want. I used this method last year and got plenty of slips, but they did take a few months to grow. The second method I'm using here is the soil method, where you simply bury half of the sweet potato and leave the top half exposed. Here I have an old ice cream container, which I've already filled with a mix of compost and potting mix, and then added some water to moisten the soil. I'm just going to push the sweet potato in until it looks like it's about halfway buried. Moisture is really important for both of these methods to work, so just make sure you keep the soil moist but not waterlogged, and the water in the jar topped up. Change the jar water if it becomes cloudy or dirty, and that's really all there is to it. As it's still pretty cold here, I'm going to put these on my heat mat to hopefully get the sprouting process started as soon as possible. Alright guys, it's been 1 week since we started the sweet potatoes off. You can see the one in the water here has got some roots starting to develop on it. Some little shoots starting at the top there, but not much yet. The one in the soil here, obviously I can't lift it out to see what the roots are looking like, but I think this one has a few more sprouts coming out of it than the one in the water. So we'll check in again in a week's time and see how they've changed. Alright guys, it's been 2 weeks since we started these sweet potatoes off on this one in the water, and we've got quite a few shoots or slips starting now. Yeah, if I take it out of the water, got some more, some bigger ones there in the water as well. That's looking pretty good. And this is how the one in the soil's going. We've got quite a few larger slips starting to sprout up on this one in the soil. So I think so far the one in the soil is definitely looking like we're getting more slips and bigger ones as well. Here's a side-by-side comparison. Alright guys, update on the sweet potatoes. I think we're at 3 weeks. I've honestly lost track of what week we're up to. I'll have to go back and check the videos. But you can see the sweet potato that's in the soil is just doing so much better, producing so many more slips. And the growth on those slips is so much better as well. You can see how vigorous that growth is. It's almost like a little forest in there. I'm so impressed by it. So I think I can safely say at this point that growing your sweet potato slips in soil rather than water definitely produces more slips and better quality slips. 4-week update on how our sweet potatoes are going. Sweet potato that's in the soil has a lot of slips coming off it now, and big ones as well. So what I'm going to do is snap a few of these off and put them into these jars here. I'll still keep them separate. It's the 12th of September today, so we are in the first month of spring here, but there's still a chance that we'll have a few cold mornings, and sweet potatoes are quite frost sensitive, so I don't want to put them out in the garden yet. So I'm just going to snap off some of these longer slips and put them into the water so they can develop some roots. There aren't currently any roots on this, so I'm just going to take off this plus this lower leaf here, and then that can go in our jar, and I'll probably take this one here off as well. Okay, so off the one in the water, we've got 2 slips that are ready to go in the water and get some more roots going on them. Now our one in the soil here, you can see has got far more slips coming off it. I can't actually zoom out far enough to get them all on camera, but I'll just snap off any of these longer ones and get them in the water so they can get some roots going. That one's got a few roots on it. So that's looking a bit more tame now, a bit more trimmed up. I could probably take that one there off as well, but I'm just going to leave it for now. I'm sure next week it'll be big enough to take off. I'm going to have a count up of these. So we know we've got 2 over here from the water. And we have 13 there from the ones that have been growing in the soil. So that's quite a big difference at 4 weeks, 2 versus 13. Hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll have enough roots on them to be able to be planted out into the garden. Alright, time for our weekly sweet potato check-in. The ones in the water have got a few more slips growing on them this week, so I'll snap those off and add them to the jar. The ones in the soil over here, I think there's just one at the back there that I'll break off. The slips that we broke off last week from the soil, they've got some nice roots growing on them now. So I'll probably plant these out into the garden next week. The ones that are in the water, they've got some small roots coming on them, but definitely not to the same degree as the ones that came out of the soil. The rest of these ones are still relatively small, so I'll let those grow some more before I break them off. So we now have 14 slips from the sweet potato that was growing in the soil. We're going to take a couple more off one that's been growing in the water. Cool, so that's another 5 from the sweet potato that was growing in the water, so that makes 7 total. So currently the sweet potato that's been growing in the water has half the amount of slips as the sweet potato that was growing in the soil. And you can just see as well, like, the amount of foliage that's on the sweet potato that was in the water is far less than what's on the slips that came off the sweet potato that's growing in the soil. Alright, welcome back. Today is week 6 in our sweet potato experiment. So there's a few more slips here that I could pick off and put into our jars of water, but today I am going to plant these slips that we have over here. I'm going to leave the ones that came off the sweet potato in the water. There's not a whole lot of roots coming off them. They'd probably be fine to plant, but I'm really looking forward to planting these ones here that come off the soil. They've got plenty of roots on them, so I'm going to go ahead and plant those today. Okay, this is the bed that we're going to be planting our sweet potatoes in today. So I'm going to plant them about 1 foot apart and in a staggered formation. Okay, so before I go ahead and plant these sweet potato slips, I wanted to talk about the difference between sweet potatoes and potatoes. So with potatoes, you plant your seed potatoes as deep as you can, and a lot of people like to row them up. And that's because the tubers on potatoes form up the stem and grow outwards. So the higher your soil is, theoretically, the more tubers can fit in that space. So sweet potatoes are a little bit different. The tubers form downwards, so they grow downwards as opposed to coming out from the stem. So last year when I planted my sweet potatoes, I planted them vertically in the ground. So I'm going to change that this year and plant them horizontally. So planting them horizontally, the theory is that your tubers will form along your stem and then grow downwards from there. Doing that means the tubers are less crowded, so they're more evenly spaced along your stem, as opposed to if they all are trying to grow straight down, they get very crowded down here and there's less space for your tubers to grow, which means inconsistent sizes, and you might get one really big tuber with a bunch of small ones. So if you plant it horizontally and your tubers form all the way along the stem, you should get nice even tuber sizes. That's the theory anyway. Haven't done it before, so I'm going to try it this year and see how it goes. So as I mentioned last week, I've got 14 slips here. So I'll see how they go with the 1 foot spacings. If I need an extra one, I'll grab one of the slips that grew in the water from inside. I've just made shallow trenches about 2 inches deep, which is staggered, and I have ended up with 14 trenches, so I'll just plant the slips that I have here. Hopefully these don't blow away with the wind. Okay, so what I am going to do is break off a few of these lower leaves here. There's roots forming all the way up here. I'm going to break those off. So there you go, you can see it's only about 1.5 inches, 2 inches deep. Just covering that over like that. Hopefully that'll work well. Alright, great, that's our first lot of sweet potatoes in. I'll make sure I do an update video on how these turn out and what sort of crop we get off them as well. So there you have it. After our 6-week test, we can see which method gave us the healthiest sweet potato slips. Now that they're all planted in the ground, the real waiting game begins. Sweet potatoes typically take around 120 days to fully mature. So I'll be back in a few months' time to show you how these slips performed and what our harvest looks like. If you found this little experiment helpful, give the video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments which method you prefer for starting your sweet potato slips. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss the harvest update. Until next time, happy gardening.